na unakuta kwamba ni idara ya, ama wizara ya serikali ndio imehusika katika hilo.
Okay. I think asante sana for that question. First of all, tuanze na what is this data?
Ndio.
Tunazungumzia data, sio hiyo bundles tunaongelea. So what you're talking about is personal data. So personal data in simple terms is any information that can be used to identify a natural person. For example, Ramla is your name, right?
Yes.
So nikiingia hapa niseme Ramla, see you just utaitika.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's your personal data.
Yes.
So anything that can be used to identify a natural person is personal data. So that is basically what we are talking about. We're not talking about maybe other non-personal data like statistical data, data that does not identify any individual. Those are not under our mandate. What is our mandate is any personal data and the privacy that it reserves. So out of this personal data, there's a special category that is termed as sensitive personal data. So today, if maybe I maybe expose Ramla Abdi, that's a general personal data, right? Your name. There's another Ramla, there's another Abdi. So how do you feel now if I say maybe expose your health record? So you see that's more sensitive. So those are special category that's called sensitive personal data. So especially this general personal data, that's your name, your ID number, your phone number, date of birth, which of course is can identify you, but there's not as much as sensitive like health record, marital status, your genetic and biometric data. Those are sensitive. So basically that's what we're talking about in terms of the data that we're talking about. When it comes to the issue you're talking about, whereby for you, these maybe health workers normally collect personal data. As I've said, for organizations to be able to collect personal data, the first point is for them to establish what is their legal reason. Are they seeking consent from this individual to give them this personal data? That's only one legal basis, but there are a number of others, including legal obligation, whereby if a government agency is obligated by Act of Parliament or the Constitution to make sure they offer a specific service, and then for them to offer this service properly, they require A, B, C, D, maybe your name, your ID number, and those ones. They can rely on that legal obligation and a specific Act of Parliament to ask you your data. So that's now already a legal ground they can rely on to collect personal data. First point is that. Number two, once collected, now they start obligations, compliance obligations on these specific government, whether it's government or private, they have what's called legal obligations, compliance requirement. Number one, they have to implement data protection principles, which means this data should be confidential, the integrity, the availability of data that should be protected. You see, they have to make sure the data collected is accurate, make sure they collect as minimal as possible to make sure what they're collecting is not maybe over required. A number of principles, including limiting to the purpose. For example, if this agency has collected it for maybe a specific purpose, let's say provisions of nets to a family, that data should be only used for that purpose, and it's only used for any other purpose that's maybe related to the same. If maybe, let's say, they want to use it for different purpose, they must make sure an establishment of a proper lawful basis as well. Let's say, for example, a private company has collected your data maybe through employment contract. You are employed. You have signed a contract. So that now is a ground that they can rely on to collect your personal data. Now, if this private entity want to use the data for marketing, they must come back to you. Or they have to establish what other lawful basis can we rely on for us to use this data that we have collected for employment contract for maybe marketing. So you see, that's now obligations, whereby make sure there is an appropriate lawful basis that they rely on, which of course can be demonstrated in terms of how it applies and how you can able to rely on. As I've said, consent can be one, legal obligation. It can be what is called maybe legitimate interest of the company. However, all these ones should be established. That is the first point. That's what we're saying. If maybe this health agency or maybe personnel that's providing the net has already maybe, let's say, has established the legal basis as per the legal obligation mandated to them by maybe Health Act or even Digital Health Act and those ones, and they have collected this data from the household. They have responsibility to protect it. If violated, you have the right to exercise your right, right to be informed. You see, all these rights has emanated from the right of privacy. So that's basically how they should have to make sure this data that they have collected is protected, by making sure they establish lawful basis and making sure they implement the principles of data protection, including confidentiality, integrity, accuracy, purpose limitation, lawfulness, all those ones. Yeah.
Naam, katika ujumbe hapa anasema waalaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anasema mtu mzima na Simbajike, anasema asanteni sana kwa kutuletea mgeni huyu ambaye anatufunza mambo muhimu sana kuhusiana na taarifa ambazo ni za siri. Anasema Wakenya tuko rahisi sana kupeana taarifa kwa sababu ya njaa ya siku moja. Ni Duli huyu. Duli, asante sana. Ni kweli Wakenya upeana taarifa. Unakumbuka story ya Worldcoin vile walijaa pale KICC na wakaenda wakapeana very crucial information about your security ambao ni jicho. Unajua katika moja ya ama nchi ambazo zimebobea katika suala la usalama, utakuta kwamba katika airport yao wanatumia alama za jicho. Na sasa hao ndio yani the highest secured countries, kama kwa mfano zile za Imarati. Sasa pale huwezi ikiwa wewe ni mhalifu unadatwa tu, si kama vidole unaweza ukapenyeza. Lakini ndugu zetu wakaenda kwa sababu ya 7000 wakaenda wakapeana information zao muhimu sana kama security ya jicho. Mwingine hapa anasema waalaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anasema muulize mgeni wetu, je, serikali kupata taarifa zetu kwa benki ni halali au ni haramu? Wanafanya kinguvu licha ya mahakama kuzuia zoezi hilo kila masaa, na haswa huyu waziri Mbadi aliyeko sasa ndio analazimisha mambo tena kwa jeuri ya hali ya juu. Je, ni sawa hilo? Haruni anasema muulize mgeni, serikali kupata taarifa zetu kutoka kwa benki. Nasema haswa huyu waziri Mbadi ndio anaonekana kulisukuma sana hili jambo. Nasema serikali ipo sawa ama wanafanya makosa wanakosea mwananchi wake?
I think that question should have been asked to the specific entity that now does that. But what I can say is that
okay, kulirekebisha hili swali ama kuliweka kwa lugha ambayo ni ya wastani. Benki kupeana information, hiyo data, personal data ambayo ni wateja wake to the government or to the ministry, ni sawa hiyo without their consent?
Okay, without saying it is okay or not okay, there's data sharing. This is what's called data sharing, whereby it is possible to share data with other agencies, whether private or public, but it should be lawful based, whereby there is first of all the requirement is that let's say let's take example of maybe company X and Y, and this company X has collected a number of personal data for their own specific purposes, and company Y want to have that data. The first point is that at the point of collection, company X must have informed the individual, for example Kenyans, let's say myself, yourself, that this data may be shared with company Y or company Z, something like that. That means that now your right to be informed has been implemented. Yes. Now, once you have known that, and they have come to a point whereby they are supposed to share data with company Y, there's what's called data sharing agreement, that they have to agree between company X and Y that this personal data will be shared, and specifying the purpose for sharing, making sure there's specific the retention period for this data, how long they are going to maybe retain this data.
Ndio.
And what will happen after that retention period.
Mhm.
Those are basically what is provided for in terms of sharing personal data with other entities. Yes.
Mwingine anasema waalaikum salaam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anasema nampongeza kipindi na nampongeza mgeni wetu Ali kwa kutuelimisha leo. Anasema sikujua mambo mengi sana yanayohusiana na data, lakini leo nimejifunza na kuanzia leo nitajikinga dhidi ya kutoa hizo, hata kama tutataka hizo apps kwenye simu, lakini hatutotoa tena kiolelaolela. Mama Mariam Moisinya, asante sana Mama Mariam Moisinya kwa ujumbe wako. Mwingine hapa anasema wa alaikum salaam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Anasema good information. Ni Mutiso huyu kutoka Machakos. Mutiso anasema it's good information leo ambayo ameweza kuipokea kutokea kule maeneo ya Machakos.
Labda tutaweza kutafuta kupokea simu kutoka msikilizaji kupitia nambari zetu 0727444454.
Na pia 0738648881 zikiwa ni nambari za moja kwa moja hewani, pamoja na ujumbe mfupi ambao pia tunaupokea msikilizaji. Kutokana na hayo mambo ambayo tumejifunza leo hii, umuhimu wa wewe kuweza kujiwekea maelezo yako muhimu ya siri, maelezo ambayo ni ya siri na ni muhimu. Iqra FM.
Salamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salaam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fadhil, karibu.
Niko karibu. Na swali langu linakuwa hivi.
Nimeenda
nunua simu.